Welcome to the Live Wildly podcast, a space where we explore how to live our wildest expressions while nourishing our hearts. Here we come together to share about our life paths, authentic expressions, and heart's wisdom with one another. We cover all things motherhood, spirituality, adventure, health and wellness, and more. I'm your host, Olivia Ashley, a mama, intuitive, and seeker of a joyful, inspired life. Let's dare to live wildly together. Hello, Live Wildly fam. I'm so glad to be back for another episode and another week with you all. How are you feeling with fall? Are you like me where you're just super excited and ready for the cool down and you can just feel the change of seasons as you're out and about? Or maybe you're in the southern hemisphere and you're going into spring and you're feeling the opposite. But for us in the northern hemisphere, I am just settling into myself. It's so interesting. And I've always liked fall, but this year feels different. And I have seen that a lot of my friends and people that I know, like we needed this reprieve. We were all so ready to cocoon, to go within ourselves, to check inwards and say, gosh, this was a year. What was this year like? What did I accomplish? What was redirected in my life that maybe I wasn't expecting? What were the hardships of my life? I think no year have I gone unscathed. I think most of us, and that's the life, we're here to explore, feel it all, have adventure, go to the depths of ourselves, lose people or things. And it is challenging, but as I've gotten older and I've realized that this is the nature, at least for me, this is what I must have signed up for in some manner, I try to appreciate it all. I try to feel whatever's coming up in the moment and allow it, because I felt so sick, so awful, so out of sorts for most of my life. And it was finally in this last probably 2 years that I finally got to the point where I understood what it meant to slow down, to not force, to feel whole in myself, to feel good in myself. And it's not perfect by any means. I am still working towards things. I still need help around the house. I still need help in many ways, and friends and community. And I was really sick last week, so you might be hearing that in my voice a little bit. And yet I was grateful. And that was weird for me. But I've been kind of on this treadmill of stress, not because I've wanted to, and I've tried so hard to exercise, take care of myself, do what I needed to do, but I'm in a season, and life has many seasons, but the season I'm in is one of fullness. I feel like I'm an octopus with 1,000 arms, way more than 8, trying to juggle all of these balls in the air and make sure I'm okay in the center, because without me, how will this get done? When will it get done? And it's something that I've had to kind of say, okay, where can I just drop things and life will not shatter and life will continue on? Or where can I go, I need help, and or delegate to someone else. And then also just letting myself feel like I'm in the perfect timing of my life. I think that's something I've struggled with, is feeling that things aren't coming quickly enough, or I don't see where I'm supposed to be. I feel a certain way or have these ideas and this want for my life. And then I'm like, but I'm still here. I'm still here. And now I've reflected of, wow, I'm grateful I'm still here, because I still have these stones to lay in front of me. I'm building this beautiful path forward. And even when I reach what I think I'm going for now, right? We need to have those stepping stones and those milestones and those markers. That will only be a marker of life. It will only be that next piece. I will attain that, and then there'll be more life to live, right? And I think that helped give me perspective that I don't need to push so hard. If I can take care of myself, take care of my family, things are met, I can then have the space to also learn, feel inwards, clean, homeschool, work, all the things that have become my life. And yet I look back almost, I'm 2 years from a decade from where I was when I had Lily, my first child, as a young 23-year-old with so much discomfort in myself, sickness in myself, struggles within myself, and the path that really started this all, that brought me here. And that's how long that took. And it's still ongoing. I'm not going to say that I'm healed and all the things, but that was a full decade. And we did so much. I remember being so scared and so unsure where my life was going to go and how would we even get bills paid. And just reflecting on that is really interesting. And I wanted to open this with actually pulling an oracle card. I pulled this from the Animal Power deck, which is Allison Charles' beautiful, beautiful animal deck. It's one of my favorites. I like to gift it. I think it's a really great intro deck. Everyone mostly likes animals. And if you're not into oracle cards yet, but maybe you have an interest, I would highly recommend that you check this deck out. I will link it in my show notes so you can also. But I pulled the rabbit card for us, and the message is activate fertility. And I want to say that, yes, while this might be you're looking to birth a new life, an actual baby, this also pertains to birthing new ideas, new projects, opportunities, even insights, these just things that drop in. And the biggest thing that came forward with this is that, one, you're ready. There's something new. Maybe you're feeling a pull. Maybe you're noticing something and you're like, wow, I can feel this. Something's shifted. Something's growing. And I want to say that often will bring up fear. And that's kind of where I am. I'm in this funny dance of activating this inner power, this inner heart, and wanting to live my life by that. And from this deck, I always pull the zebra card, which is break out of the box. And I know that is my journey right now. Is I still am holding on to a lot of limiting beliefs, ideas of, what's the equation? How do I exactly do this the quote unquote right way? But I know I'm not here to do it that way. I'm here and I've always been that wild child, the rebel, the outsider looking in, and I've been able to be fluid. Like I really can dance in all these spheres and also be a part of mainstream and work and show up and do that. So I'm learning how to find that integration. And that's something that I think you all too, if you're listening, are probably going through this in some way or maybe not, and maybe something else is happening. But I think we all can relate to that fear, especially when something new or a new idea, a new opportunity, you're trying to go for something different. Fear can often come in and then cripple you. And I want to remind you that fear is just that. It is a perspective. And it doesn't have to be your perspective always. You can say, I hear you, body. I hear you, fear. I see that you're trying to protect me. I see that you're scared. And that is valid. I think validating that fear is the first step to really coming to terms with it. But then knowing, but I am working towards this, or I am moving towards that, or this is a new thing I want to explore. So fear, I see you, but I'm going to keep going. However you get motivation, support to continue, this is your sign that you're on the path, you're listening, and you can step in and call upon Rabbit to help activate your fertility and in whatever way that is coming forward for you. And I think it's interesting though that I pulled this card as we are going into fall, because fall, you're starting to slow down, you're starting to dive into your roots, to all the energy is coming back in your body to kind of shore up for winter, to slow down, to conserve, preserve, right? And Rabbit, I think, is asking us to start to do that and use this time as we slow a little bit down, as we shore up some things, to start to activate whatever you want next or whatever's coming, because we're not there. The path is not in front of us. The marker might not be seen in front of us. We don't know exactly how this is going to come forward, what this will look like, when, right? The timing, but we can feel we are getting the stones of the path that we are laying to move forward. So I hope that's helpful. And this all brings me to today's guest. So this is a guest show. It's another fun one with Katie Gold. I met her because we were interested both in herbalism, and yes, I hope you all like herbalism, or you're interested in supporting your family maybe, or yourself with natural remedies or support, or just reconnecting to the land, to plants, whatever that is. For me, my interest really stems from wanting to support myself, my family, to learn these ancient, right? It's kind of funny to say that because it's not, but this practice and this way of life that I think we really quickly ran the opposite way of technology, and it ultimately disconnected us, and these processes with our food, with our medicines that really pulled us away from the source, from the root, from the wholeness. And I think there's so much benefit, and right, like, wow, look at all the great things that led us. However, I feel I'm ready to re-step into feeling empowered, to re-step into reconnecting to plants, to land, to animals, to ancestors, and understanding that wisdom so I can feel like I know how to take care of myself, my kids, on the level that I'm comfortable with, noting I will always turn to my doctor or others if I need to, or if I feel I need to. But truthfully, the only time I've been to a doctor in the last decade is to have a baby, and it's been a midwife. So I have felt very confident, and I've lived this path, and I've been okay and strong, and I feel like I've healed myself. So I just want to give that caveat of when I say herbalism, my interest in herbalism, that's a little bit of what I'm talking about. And if you're listening and you want to keep listening, note that me and my dear friend Liz Neihart, who came on episode 7, are going to start some type of series together. That's going to talk a little bit more about plants. So more to come on that, but back to our guest, Katie Gold. She is a lovely person, and it really was, this conversation was like having just good friends coming together, learning about each other, having fun, talking about life. I can highly relate to her in so much of her story. She's in corporate America, I'm in corporate America, but also has all this beautiful, spiritual, deep wisdom, and she too is looking for this integration. I think she's met it and she's found it just like I have too, but in her own way. And she brings forward a lot of really great tips, answers that I just walked away going, that was really helpful. I learned a lot. Those gave me tangible ideas and ways that I wanted to show up in life. And again, I think this is just fun, friend, girl talk time. So Katie is a certified meditation teacher. She's a level 2 Reiki practitioner and herbalist. She spends her 9 to 5 in the tech world and enjoys weaving her background of human health, biology, and Tibetan studies into her daily rituals. She prioritizes time in nature, and she is humbled by the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. She currently enjoys using her creativity to spark joy and heal those around her through homemade candles, skincare products, and custom tinctures. So in this episode, we talk a lot about all of that. You're going to learn about her story, learn about her mother and her grandmother was in Auschwitz, and her family's journey. There's lots of females and this long lineage of women in her life that all had this intuitive mindset and this creativity that she allowed to inform her and who she is and what she wants to do in this life. So a lot of her investigations and her path has been rooted in this craving and this knowing that she wants to heal others, help others. And so she at first thought she was going to become a doctor or walk that route. And it's more turned into a different path of meditation, Reiki, herbalism, helping herself, again, how I just expressed, to really feel empowered and embodied in her life. And we talk about how the pandemic heightened a lot of everything, that she was struggling with anxiety and some internal chaos and this go, go, go-ness, that when the pandemic hit and she had to slow down, it really sparked this pathway into insightfulness, introspectiveness, and this wanting to learn more. You're going to learn about it all. So her relationship to the land, to nature, how that's helped her, her intuitive origin story about how she navigates the corporate world while also being into meditation and Reiki, and how she's found this integration piece and just owns it. And then also about how she found her current partner and her life in Boulder and her extrovertedness. And it's just really fun. I think it's a well-rounded episode, and I actually would love to have her come back on and dive deeper into some of the things that we just didn't get to cover, like her grandma in Auschwitz and that experience, and some other things that I think she could just really be beneficial for you all. So if you are enjoying the podcast, please subscribe. And after this episode, if you enjoyed it, please feel free to share to anyone you think would enjoy it. And if you'd like, rate and review. It really helps get the word out there, helps us build this community, this container. And I just want to say thank you. So I wish you all the best as you walk into your fall season and or spring season. And thank you for listening. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being you, and enjoy. Well, hello, Katie, and welcome to the Live Wildly podcast. I'm so happy you're here.
Hi, Olivia. It's so good to be here.
Thank you. So why don't we start off by you telling us a little bit about yourself, maybe what you do, and a little bit of your story up to this point.
Yeah, sure. So I live in Boulder, Colorado. I've been in Boulder for a month and in Colorado for about 2 years. Prior to that, I was in Boston. And prior to that, I was actually in Atlanta, but I'm originally from New York. I grew up partly on New York, partly in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So a little bit different scenery there. I work for Amazon. I'm a product manager at Amazon, and I've been in corporate America for about 6 years now. And I think I'll probably contemplate every other year if I should leave, if not. But other than that, I grew up pretty normal suburban life. I have two older brothers, and I grew up traditionally Jewish. My grandma is a Holocaust survivor. She was in Auschwitz, and she is still with us at 99. And I think she's had a huge influence in my upbringing, but also just in my willpower and having that intuitive push and drive, because she had it in the one of the toughest times in history, and she was able to push through. And every time we talk about it and ask her, she just said she knew she was going to make it, and she just knew every day she had to just push through that day and get through that day. And that's kind of my philosophy in life, is like, no matter how big or how hard things are, if you break it down enough, you're able to get through that. So whether it's a big project, whether it's a tough workout, or it's a literally anything I can think of, for me, if I can just break it down small enough, I can push through it, and I can just listen to my body and say, okay, I'm okay. These feelings that are coming up, are they my true feelings, or are they feelings that I can potentially push aside and say that's maybe my critical self talking, or that's maybe someone from my past life talking to me and trying to push me down.
That makes sense. And wow, what an incredible journey. And I can only imagine that affects not only her, but like you said, your mom, yourself, everyone in that line from there. And is that something, so your mindset that was spoken to you, or you just witnessed and kind of picked up and ran with, or what was that like?
So even though my immediate family is mostly men, my maternal line is all women. So my mom has sisters, and all of her sisters have daughters, and we are all super tight knit. they're all older than me. I find that I kind of use them as almost like sisters in a way, but more like guides, when they would go through big life decisions, going to college, getting engaged, getting married, having kids. I find that I leaned on them a lot more than I anticipated. And really I saw everything that my grandma had kind of instilled for herself in all of us naturally. I think naturally we are all pretty creative women. I find that my mom, even though she probably doesn't want to admit it, she is incredibly intuitive. She can find out if someone's pregnant just by smelling them. She has this incredible ability to call bullshit when it is. Sorry if I can't curse.
No, it's okay. Please do.
But there's something about it that I think I wish she would capture more. And I think that's something that I was able to bring into myself, like witnessing her ability to be so intuitive and so innate. I find that she doesn't even use half of her abilities. And she doesn't really take care of herself and her body as she could. And for that, I find that I almost double that. So I take care of myself in such a way where I'm almost trying to negate the work that she's done. My mom has MS, and it's really hard for me to witness her and her body kind of break down over time, and for me not being able to do anything. So I think I've kind of taken it in and said, okay, natural medicine has been the only thing in this whole situation that's really helped her. We've gone through several doctors, we've gone through specialists, and everyone's kind of just said, if you eat healthy, you're fine. And I'm like, I think it's a little more than that, stress, sleep. But I also think as I go through my own journey, I'm realizing that there are herbs that can support her. There's certain body work that can support her. So I'm almost doing the work for myself, but inherently I'm doing it for her as well. So I can hopefully one day give it back to her.
Is she open to that? Does she allow you to share? Because it's so similar, the relationship with my own mother and my own father. And I lost my father last year to cancer. And it was so hard knowing that, to your point, it's like I have this such deep awareness because I've worked so hard to get to myself in a good, healthy place for me. And I wanted to give him all these things, like try this or do this. And, at some point, I think you have to just obviously let them just be. But what is that relationship like with your mom?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm so sorry about your dad. I find that at first she was super resistant. I mean, I think she was diagnosed pretty late, which is great because it's by the time it really impacts her ability to walk and things like that, she'll be old enough where that's already going to start to happen. But I think she was in denial for many years. And when it started to actually show that if you did eat poorly, it would progress. So I think she is trying, and I think she is open, but when it comes down to it, I do book her a Reiki session or I do give her herbs. I come back and visit her, and those herbs are not touched. And that Reiki session has expired. So it's a fine balance. I find that if she wants it, she knows it's available. She just has to come and ask for it, which is probably really hard for her to do.
That makes a lot of sense. It sounds like you have a lot of strong women, strong-headed. I know who I am. Don't tell me otherwise. I'm planted and seated, but I think like you said, it's a great way that you can use her as a reflection. While you can be there and support her, she's going to ultimately be who she is, but then you get to make decisions based off what you see and how you now want to live your life. And I think it's such a lesson going through an illness, a trauma, something like that. Everyone reacts so differently, but we're all on our own journey. So thank you for sharing a little bit about that. And we're definitely going to come back to this, but I do want to talk a little bit about what it was like growing up with the outdoors. You said you grew up in New York and then you went to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. What was that like? Those are two completely different places. And where did you start to lean? Which did you like a little bit more? And how has that affected you, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. I was not in New York City. I want to say that. So we did have more outdoors than typical New York City, but it was still very much where I could see my neighbor's house very clearly. I think my parents were both very outdoorsy, and I think it just was something that we did as kids. You know, we didn't really have, maybe we had TVs back then, but we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have all these gadgets that kids now have. So when I was entertaining myself, I was outside. We had a swing set, which was awesome. I remember it, going behind the swing set. There was a bunch of bushes, and I made my own little like nook in there. And I would sometimes sit there and I would like draw in the dirt. And that was kind of just my private space versus I think my brothers kind of took over the rest of the yard. But I think I've always kind of found peace and quiet in nature. And we started going to Jackson Hole probably when I was like 4. And then we ended up living there part time till I think they ended up permanently moving back when I was in college. So for a good chunk of my life. And I think there was this rawness there. It wasn't probably what Jackson Hole is now, which is a little bit more, I would say, bougie. But I think there was this rawness where if you were up early enough, you would see wildlife 100%. If you were quiet enough, you would probably hear wildlife. If you were kind of just more present, I think you would open up and see a lot more than most other places. I find I look for that kind of quiet space. So cities for me have always been really difficult where I'm trying to have that quiet space, but in the background, you're hearing construction, you're hearing cars, you're hearing ambulances, you're hearing probably drunk people on the street. I think it's a very different experience for me having a place where I can call home that truly is quiet. And I don't know if Boulder is that yet, because I still feel like I'm in a city where there is more laughter, especially this time of year where students are coming back, and I definitely enjoy that. But I think for me and for who I know that I want to be, having that peace and quiet to that next level where what I'm hearing is just what should be and natural is really important.
That makes a lot of sense. And yes, Boulder right now, it has changed so much. I lived there for 8 years, and the last couple years that we were there, and even when I go back and go up for work, I'm always amazed. It's always changing. It's busy still, but you do have that peace, the electricity type. Like it does feel like this portal of sorts that you can reach. And so with growing up and having and finding that solitude in being outside, how has that now affected your relationship or interest in the land? I know you're doing an herbalism certification and you're interested in herbalism. How does that all come together, and or what has drawn you to it?
Yeah, I find that my relationship with the land is better than it used to be. I feel like I over the years kind of neglected it, especially when I was a student and even through my younger 20s. I felt like I was thriving and going towards, the nightlife and the adventure and the just the spontaneity of being young and having to experience cities and different events and different restaurants and all this. And I think truly COVID has actually made that shift for me. So COVID was a time for everyone to take a pause, whether they liked it or not. And I was traveling Monday through Thursday for work. I was a consultant, and I never really had that break. I would travel, I'd come home, I would maybe relax that night, and then the next day I would go into work, and then that was a Friday, and then Friday night I would go out and see friends. Saturday I would do something with friends. Saturday night I'd do something with friends, and maybe Sunday I would meal prep and sit at home and watch TV. I never had that true pause or that true escape back to nature because of the life I lived. And then COVID forced me out of that. I moved back home with my parents, and the quietness that I heard was the quietness I remembered. And that was what I was craving again. And it was like almost like an aha moment. And that's actually when I started to get into Reiki. I I kind of looked inward and I was like, I appreciate all this quietness around me, but there's still a lot of chaos inside me, and I need to heal that. And I don't remember how it came to be that I was going to learn Reiki, but it was almost like an aha moment where I was like, this is it. I just know it. And so I did level one, and then I really felt like I wanted to do more with it. So I ended up doing level two, and I kind of stopped there. And I just remember going in my parents' backyard. They probably thought I was crazy, and lying just on the ground and doing Reiki on my own body with crystals on my body, and doing it for like an hour, maybe even 2 hours, and just letting the time go by. And this is so much more healing than anything I could have experienced before.
It's so beautiful. And it truly is. If you haven't experienced it, you just don't know, right? And I think it's really easy to say, oh, I discount that. But once you've done it and you feel it, yes, Reiki is just so blissful. So I want to ask, why is our energetic body important to take care of? And what have you found in doing Reiki on yourself and others? In what ways has it really transformed or affected you from learning and doing Reiki?
Yeah, so I kind of always had anxiety, and I don't think it was labeled as anxiety for many years. And COVID brought it out to the extreme. And I truly thought the world was ending. So I had panic attacks every time someone put on the news. I had, anxiety where my heart rate was always at least 100. I was constantly high. I constantly felt on edge and just very skittish. And I really resisted going on any kind of medication. I felt like it was something that I needed to heal, not that a pill could heal for me. So there was a combination of I've already studied meditation. So I actually studied Tibetan studies as a minor at college. And I understood that there is an internal power that could kind of relax that whole body. And so I was really getting into meditation more, but I found that there was still this almost like buzzing energy in me that I need to release. And I couldn't figure out how, I almost felt like I needed to scream constantly to get it out. And when I learned about Reiki and that it's really about like healing and moving the energy and finding stuck energy and working with the energy of the body, I obviously was kind of like unsure. I didn't think it was exactly what would do the fix for me. But I also was like, you know what? I have all the time in the world. I may as well try. And I felt like a deeper level of healing that I hadn't felt before. And I felt my body just kind of settle into itself and calm down.
Mm. Were you always aware of that energy, or was that really the point where it connected that, oh, this is what this is, and now this Reiki helps me ground it, shift it, affect it? Outside of that, I think that's the biggest piece is how did you become aware really of that? Because I think that's what holds up a lot of people is no one really talks about your energetic body. No one really discusses it or understands it. So what was that like for you?
Yeah. I think I'd always had that buzzing energy about myself. I was always energetic, but I didn't have ADHD. I was very good at being able to separate and focus at different tasks. So, I just kind of thought that was my personality, that I was just a person that didn't need caffeine. And it truly wasn't until COVID where I was forced to give that break and then say to myself, okay, now that I have this break and I can't do 100 things, why do I still feel like I have that buzzing energy? Like, why can't I settle down? And I think it took me probably several months to really examine it. And I think the struggle that most people have is they don't have the time to sit inward, or they don't give themselves the time to sit inward. So, you know, prior to COVID, we had jobs, and then after your job, You weren't just going home and relaxing. You were going to meet a friend, or you were going home and watching TV and escaping your mind, or you were cooking dinner for your family, or you were going to your kid's game. There's always something that kept you occupied. And when you had to be forced to not be occupied and not have an agenda, I think a lot of people might look outward, but I looked inward and I was like, okay, there's clearly something going on where I can't relax. And I need to figure out why I can't relax.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that this was what sparked your curiosity in all these alternative and natural health systems, was just this excitement level, this, in the pause that COVID gave you? Or was there other things that, for some people it's health issues or rock bottom that leads you to explore this path of wholeness and health? I'm curious what that journey was, if there was anything else that really brought that to the forefront.
Yeah. I don't think there was any, no one got sick in my family in such a way that I felt like I needed to take this path. But I had always been interested in being a doctor or healing. At least that's what I kind of categorized it as. I wanted to be an OBGYN so bad. All I wanted to do was bring babies into the world. I thought that was the coolest thing. And I remember I was probably like 10 or 11 and I dressed up as a surgeon, and my mom still has that photo somewhere. And I was just like, this is the empowerment that I want and I want to give to other people. And I kind of swore to myself at that point, I'll never have a desk job, which obviously has changed. But going from there, I always was more interested in my biology classes versus English. And I always found learning about the body and learning about ways to improve the body was so interesting to me. I loved fitness and I loved nutrition because, you could pair them and have your food fuel your body and have your body get stronger so you could do all these awesome things. And in college, I was pre-med. I actually studied human biology and human health. And then when it came down to going to take a physics course over the summer or getting an internship, I decided to get an internship. And this was going into my senior year of college. And after the internship, they offered me a full-time job at the consulting firm. And I took it. And I think I don't regret that, but I think my life potentially could have looked a little different if I didn't stay with, my physics course and end up applying to med school and whatnot. But I also think it's kind of made its way back to the main point, which is I want to heal people. I might not do it in the way that I thought I was going to do it, but I can still do it in a way that fits my needs and fits my goals.
Thank you for sharing that. And to bring it to the healing powers and your intuition, you said that your mother is very intuitive and you've seen that and you've reflected and taken that in. What is your intuitive origin story? Have you always kind of had that awareness and this knowing that gut sense or interactions of sorts, or what was that journey for you?
I think as a woman in this society, I have struggled with listening to my gut. I have felt it and heard it, and I've pushed it down. I've been in so many situations, whether they were in high school or in college or even, as an adult, where I knew I need to get out of that situation or I knew this wasn't right, but I felt uncomfortable leaving, or I felt like I would upset someone if I left the situation. And I didn't, and I stayed. And again, I don't regret, the things that I've done, but I definitely have empathy for that self, that I couldn't listen to myself and truly take action on it.
Yeah. Oh, I can reflect. I can totally relate. I think anyone listening to this can pick out a moment and say, oh, hindsight's a bitch if we can go there, right? Sometimes, and you don't know, you might have that ping and then not listen. And then you realize, oh, okay, that was why. But We accept and we learn. And what would you say are your strongest intuitive gifts? Is it, of the clairs, clairaudience, clairsentience? How does it come through for you, that feeling?
That's a good question. I'm still navigating it for sure. I think it's taken many years and a lot of therapy for me to truly listen and separate what's my intuition and what's my critical self. I think it's interesting. I used to always have incredibly vivid dreams, and I never thought anything of it until there were several times in the last like 5 years where I had a dream. And because I had a dream about that person, I reached out to them. So, for example, I had a dream, my college friends, her mom, I had gone on vacation with them, and her mom had cancer, and I had known that. And I had a dream the night before I reached out to her where her mom was visiting my friend and I. We did not live in the same city, but in the dream we did. And it was a really nice time. She took us out to get lunch, and it was just a really pleasant, calming dream. And the next morning I woke up and I reached out to my friend and I was like, hey, just want to check on you, see how you're doing. How's your mom feeling? And she didn't respond for probably like 10 hours. And she responded that night being like, she actually passed away this morning.
Oh, full
Yeah.
goosebumps. Whoa.
Yeah.
It's like she visited you. She was visiting all the people, maybe just giving
Yeah.
you that last connection in that last moment. But aren't dreams incredible? I am so fascinated by them. And actually, that's how my mom gets a lot of her intuition. She'll dream someone dies, like a celebrity or someone weird. She'll wake up and be like, oh, I had this dream, and then see it on the news that person passed that night. So I think dreams are so much powerful than we often realize. You seem to have realized your powerful
Yeah.
dreams and made those connections. And I think it just shows like the power of the collective consciousness and community and our souls even. And so your mom has all those senses and can smell if someone's pregnant and things like that. What was that like growing up? Were there little things that you noticed and you're like, oh, I wish I could do that? Or were there things that she did that helped her be intuitive? Or this was just something she just was and that was it?
I think it was hard, growing up. The mother daughter relationship was always kind of rocky for us. And she had a good sense of friendship for sure. And she's like, hey, that friend you're hanging out with, they're going to backstab you. They're not a good friend. And I would hear it, and I'd probably hear it in myself and I would ignore it. And I think she's just very good at reading people. She has a good understanding of their intentions, a good understanding of who they are, why they're in this situation, whether they're in the situation for positive reasons or negative reasons. And I think she does listen to herself very clearly, and she definitely knows who she is, but I don't know if she can connect it as an intuition.
Mhm. That makes sense. I was just curious because it's so interesting to reflect back and see who we grew up with or the experience that we have, and they obviously affect us today. But it's interesting to look at generationally what we see and how that plays forward. Like, look how far you've come and all the things that you're interested in and how you take care of yourself. It's just, I think it's really interesting to reflect on. And on this thought, you are also a meditation teacher. So mindfulness is very forefront to your mind. How did that come into your life and how has that affected you, supported you along your journey?
Yeah. So I went to a place called Emory University in Atlanta, and they have this great Tibetan program where they actually partner with the Dalai Lama, and the Dalai Lama gets to come and visit every 2 years. And I really just wanted to meet him or see him. I just thought that was the coolest thing. So in order to do that, you had to be in one of the classes. So I took this class with my friend. I had heard it was an easy A. I went to the class, and of course, that was the year that he wasn't visiting, but the class was so impactful for me because here I was just thinking, what my life was and what my thoughts were and how my life, kind of interacted with other people. That was just is, if if something bad happened or if I was feeling bad about myself, that was just it. I couldn't change that. I couldn't make it go away. I couldn't reflect on it. And I think Buddhism and just learning about the techniques of Buddhism through mindfulness kind of showed me that your mind is so much stronger than we have ever realized, and we have the power to adjust things. I mean, neuroplasticity in itself is so incredible that we can literally change the neural pathways of our brain and fix the way we have these core beliefs that are stuck in our mind, either through childhood traumas, PTSD, or even just general life traumas. And so I found that as a way for me, again, to make myself stronger and to make myself heal from things that I hadn't even realized I needed healing from. So I ended up taking more classes, and I had enough credits to end up with a minor. And one of the classes that I took was compassion-based cognitive therapy. And that was a specific type of meditation that's also paired with mindfulness and therapy in a lot of ways. And so from that, you get a certification from the class. And I was able to pass the class and get the certification. And that kind of led me into just doing mindfulness trainings and meditations with friends. And then when I graduated, I told people at work, and they were like, we'd love for you to start teaching some meditations once or twice a week. And it kind of evolved from there. And I ended up teaching a global meditation course and program at my old company for several years with hundreds of participants every program. And I think the biggest impact on it for me was that I was seeing people also change and people have that aha moment, which was really cool. And then when COVID hit and I was able to, like I said, have that time, I was trying to make that connection between that Reiki and the energetics of it and meditation with that mind body connection and have that full spectrum of mind body spirit health. I think that's kind of where I expanded it into herbalism to say, okay, I can work on my mind through meditation. I can work on my body through fitness and nutrition, and I can work on my spirit through Reiki. But what if something comes up? What if there's a health need and I don't want to go to the doctor for them to just give me an antibiotic that probably is not going to solve it because it's deeper? And what is that deep rooted issue? And that's when I actually start seeing an herbalist in Colorado, and she kind of made that connection for me. That's when you need to pull in all of these other tools, when you can use Reiki and when you can use mindfulness, but then you can also use herbs for some physical side effects. You know, perfect example, I love to use cramp bark when I have menstruation cramps. And Midol had never done it for me, ever. I had just resorted into heating pads and curling up in a ball.
Oh my gosh, I can relate so much. And you so eloquently put that. If I can reflect that to you, that makes so much sense. And it's so fascinating because I see so much of my journey in your journey. But yeah, like having all these tools in our toolbox, and it's unique for each person, but there's fundamental pieces that are just so powerful. And it's absolutely incredible that you've found these pieces and to see your journey, how each little piece has come in and kind of filled you and supported you. But getting into your 9 to 5, I mean, gosh, you wear so many hats and support so many others through the things you've learned. How have you navigated the corporate world while also exploring this creativity, your intuitive interests, the herbalism? How has that all come together, if it has?
Yeah, no, it has. It has. I will say, having a mindful approach to meetings and having a mindful approach to answering nasty emails comes into play a lot more than you'd think. There's tools that I'll bring in. I'll bring in this, respond, not react tool, which is something that comes from mindfulness, where you're going to always react to something with an emotion. And if you pause and say, okay, I'm actually not going to do anything with this reaction. I'm just going to float. I'm going to let this emotion come up and then come down. So let's say it's anger, which usually it is. I don't respond immediately. I don't react. I don't show any expression if I'm on camera. I just take a deep breath in, slowly let it out, wait about 10 seconds, and then I'm able to respond clearly and without ego, without emotion, and just share, these are the facts. This is how I can present it. I don't need to bring in my emotion or my personal feelings towards this situation.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, yay for those tools. I can only imagine what your life would be like if you didn't, and the anger that you would feel, and the anger that so many people feel. And have you felt like you've needed to stay in the intuitive closet to do your work, to show up in your career and say, okay, I wear this hat here, and then I'm this person over here? I know you said you've taught meditation classes to folks at your work, and I'm just curious what that's been like, because I think a lot of us feel that way, where we are working, and I know I do, where we work 9 to 5s and we give our all and we have this persona and we know how to function and we do it well. And then there's outside of that, all of these other pursuits that really fill us in a different way. And I'm curious how that has been for you.
Yeah, I think the term work-life balance is a myth. It's not work life, it's just life, and you work in your life. So finding a way to integrate the things that I love has always been a struggle because they're almost so completely opposite from what I do. So I actually try to break it down. Why do I love being a meditation teacher, Reiki, and herbalism? Because I'm helping and healing people. So what am I doing with work? I'm helping them by making them better products, by making them a better feature for that product. So I try to weave in my passions and the core belief of what they are into my work, because otherwise I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it as much and for how long I've done it. I think there are harder days. There are days where it's really beautiful outside, or maybe there's a day where we get a ton of snow and I'm stuck on these calls looking outside and you're like, all I want to do is be out there skiing or snowshoeing or just playing in the snow, and I'm stuck inside with a job that I'm not fully fulfilled with. And I think there are two ways to look at it. You can say, I won't get any fulfillment in my job, but I'll get it all outside of the job. Or you can say, I can find what fulfills me within my job and then fully fill that cup afterwards with my outside activities. But I find that if I separate them too much, I almost resent my job. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, where they resent their job because their job restricts them from the things that they want to do. So, if your job says, hey, you can't take that vacation, that's something that you're then going to resent that your boss or your team for, because they couldn't let you have that vacation or couldn't let you have that gateway that you needed to fulfill your passions. So for me, it's setting boundaries. Hey, I'm not going to work late on a Friday because I'm going to go, on a hike after work. Or, hey, I'm going to set, timelines to when I can and can't have meetings, so I can go on a midday walk with my dog, or I can have the ability to take an herbalism course on a Wednesday afternoon. Finding that balance and staying true to who you are. I found that when I first started in corporate America, I gave my whole self to my job because I didn't have a family, I didn't have a partner, I didn't have a dog, or I didn't have all of these things that maybe people older than me would say, hey, I got to go. I got to drop off directly at 5 p.m. because I got to, drop off my kids, or I got to go to their baseball game. Instead, I say, why are those things that they have more valuable than the things that I have? I have a life outside of work. So regardless of if I have kids, if I am a mother, or if I have commitments, I can still say, these are my working hours and I can't go beyond them right now. I can do what I can today and finish it up tomorrow, or I can reprioritize my day to get it done if it's really needed. So for me, it's the mind shift of it, making sure that I can say to myself, I am still being who I want to be, while maybe not doing the job that I want.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That makes so much sense. And it's interesting to see that so many people never really find that, though. I don't know if this is a generational thing that just people before us, how the days were set up and the expectations were, that they just couldn't, that work was life and that there was no distinction. I've never heard it described the way you just did. And it was such an aha moment of that is such a myth. We do just live, like work is a part of it, but we have to remember we are people behind that. And I think this is so important because most of us have 9 to 5s. Most of us are shifting jobs, never really feel fulfilled, never really feel okay in ourselves, or we don't have the time, or maybe we have kids and we don't have that balance. How and what would you recommend for those looking for that? Where does someone start?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have kids, so I can't necessarily make any suggestions there, but I will say I love my mornings to myself. So if that means waking up 30 minutes earlier, even an hour earlier, to have that 30 minutes to an hour to yourself, that starts your day so much stronger. So what I try to do is I usually will wake up around 5:30 and I do get a workout in, and then I shower and I make sure that I'm set up for my day before I help others. So before I even feed my dog, I'm fully set up to start working if I have to, but I'm able to feed him and take him on a 45-minute walk or take him to the jog park and then come back and start work. And to me, that's me fulfilling my personal time with a workout and with a nice shower. I always try to go outside even for 2 minutes to look at the sun as it's rising. I'm very lucky where my gym is also my office, but it is also facing the rising sun. So every morning I actually can literally just open the window and have direct sunlight right here. But for people who live in cities, go outside for 2 minutes without sunglasses. Having that natural light, to me, that's physically is kickstarting and biologically kickstarting your day, but it also is setting an intention. It's setting the intention that, all right, today's the new day. What do I want as goals, and what do I want kind of as that mindset going into that day? And then starting whatever else. So maybe for me, it's taking care of my dog, but maybe for someone else, it's taking their kids to school, it's feeding them, it's getting them dressed, and then transitioning into the next layer, which is work for me. But for someone else, it could be, running errands or whatnot. And I try not to set up too many goals for myself. I think that you will set yourself up for failure if you're like, I have to do all 5 of these things, because then at the end of the day, you're worried that you didn't do it, you're disappointed in yourself, and now you can't sleep. I will say I personally struggle with, whenever I do have a break, not going directly onto Instagram or onto my phone. I'm pretty good about no technology in the bedroom. I don't go on my phone while I'm in the bed, nor do I go on it when I wake up. So I actually leave my phone in my side table and I go work out, and I have my Apple Watch on me if something happens and someone calls me. But other than that, I'm not going onto social media and sitting on my workout mat, scrolling through Instagram instead of finishing a workout or instead of showering. So I try to give myself at least an hour to maybe 2 hours in the morning without any technology. And then I can dive into it when I have a podcast going, maybe when I'm walking or listening to music. And then obviously when I'm working on my computer. I will say at the end of the day, that's when I struggle the most. I'm so fatigued from being in front of screens, from being on all day, whether it's on camera, whether it's on call, whether it's just like on point. I feel like it's so exhausting having that constant need to perform your best. And then at the end of the day, all I want to do is lie down and watch TV and just turn off my brain. And the one thing that's really helped me is having a dog and forcing me to go outside, but being in an environment that makes it more enjoyable to go outside. So we live 4 streets from Chautauqua, and I try to go hike once a week or maybe even more. But after work, I walk up to Chautauqua and I walk around there with my dog, and then I walk back. And it's something about just having that view of nature that's such an aha, beautiful remembrance of like, this is what life is really about. And I
Mm.
don't really want to watch TV.
Yeah, all those are such great tips. Wow. And you reminded me how much I need to restart my day, my morning routine since having my son. It has been everything is out the window, and that's okay too. But just those little shifts and not having technology, there's so much research behind what you do in those last like 30 minutes, hour of your day and your night affects that next day. And same with how you start that morning. So those are huge and really big and really intentional places that we can focus on that will have major impacts. I think people overlook that or feel, no, I need the sleep or whatever. But if you can't find the time in your day elsewhere, then try to fit it in there. And I'm a huge proponent of nature. I'm so jealous of your Chautauqua just ability to go explore and be in nature and commune with that. I think it's so important. And we can all find it in our own ways if we don't have the beautiful setting of Boulder right there behind us. But those are all incredible tips. Thank you for sharing about that.
I mean, I could talk about this all day, but I do think, for anyone listening that lives in a city or maybe lives in a neighborhood that they can't take, walks, they're maybe not as accessible, or maybe they're injured where they actually can't take walks. I think there is beauty in literally sitting outside and just observing. So, what I used to live in the North End in Boston, which is like historically the Italian district. And I loved walking in around there. I mean, the smells, the Italian men yelling at each other. It was just something about it was very like homey, which is kind of weird. But I loved just not listening to music, not being on my phone. I wouldn't even take my phone on these walks. I would just walk around and observe. And to me, it's almost like a gratitude exercise because I see almost like snippets of other people's lives and other situations. And I'm able to be like, wow, that's so awesome that this person is about to take their first bite of their first cannoli of a famous bakery, or this person is in an argument with their partner. And I'm so grateful that I have such a great supporting partner that I can go home and, appreciate. And maybe that's it for me. I go into nature and I feel that gratitude and appreciation that I neglected to feel the rest of the day because I was stuck on a laptop staring at a screen. So it doesn't matter how long you're doing it or when you're doing it or what doing it actually is, whether it's physically being in the mountains and nature or just being outside. I think it's being able to take a step back from everything that happened that day and appreciate things outside of your little bubble.
Exactly. You said it really well. Whatever your situation, wherever you are, how can you just find some time to get some fresh air? And if you can't move, put on a nature documentary, like if you really must, right? Just have
Yeah.
something that allows you to get perspective, I think is really what all of this does for you. And I am curious if you could tell us how your partner and your friends react to your lifestyle and your intuitive side and all the things that you're doing. I'm guessing you've created a really supportive group around you, but did you always have that or have you had to navigate? And I look and reflect on my own of standing in my own power and saying, this is who I am, and then attracting those who can show up in that way. But I've had a lot of messy friendships or partnerships, and I'm curious what that journey has been like.
Yeah. I specifically remember getting tarot cards when I was 18 or 19, and I loved them. I thought they were so cool, and I would, my friends and I would always just, do them for fun. We wouldn't really think too much of it. And I think the friend group that I created was at that time little, like each person was almost like a little bit of myself. And they were all so different because at that time I didn't really know who I was. And I was trying to grow myself into who I wanted to become. And I was struggling with that because I didn't know if I wanted to become corporate Katie or nature Katie or hippie Katie or biology Katie. And so I think I found that I had people who supported me no matter what. But as I kind of grew into who I am today, I've had some of those friendships kind of disappear or not really become as fulfilling. And as far as, who I am now, I think being in Boulder and being in Colorado, there are so many people with the same mindset that it was so easy for me to fall into a friend group. But when I was living in Boston, I actually really struggled with that. I was dating someone who judged me and who didn't really appreciate what I had to offer and didn't really understand what I was doing or why I was doing it or how it could help me. And I lived with girls who also judged me. I remember I would meditate and have just some candles around, and I would turn off the lights, and I'd really just get into a soothing place before bed most nights. And I had a roommate call me out being like, that is so weird that you do that. And I just don't get it. And you have to have a really strong understanding of who you are, not to let that get to you. I think as I've kind of grown into this person, I've found that there just are people that are not going to like you, and there are people that are not going to understand, and they're not going to hear you. And I think that's the hardest thing that I've had to get over. You can tell them as much as you want and explain to them, but they're not going to hear it because they don't want to hear it. And that's fine. You can choose to have them in your life at a distance, or you cannot have them at all, but understand that there's going to be that barrier between you because they won't listen. They won't hear what you have to say. And I struggle with that with my family, for sure. I come from a family of people that have very different political opinions and economical opinions and environmental opinions. I think when it comes down to things that we can do together, sometimes it's limiting.
Yeah, you're right. It takes a lot of just courage and understanding of yourself and knowing, no, this makes me feel good. This is what's true to myself. And that's okay that you don't understand. You don't have to understand, but then I don't have to have you in my life too, if you're going to come at me with those things. And I know it's hard with family, right? I think we have a little bit more of a distance of sharing parts of ourselves in that way, but oh, it's such a journey to find your people and to find the community and trust in yourself. And so coming to your partner today, can you tell us a little bit about who that is, your relationship
Yeah.
story?
So we met in Boston. We were both living in Boston. We actually met on Hinge, which is kind of the norm now. Probably not for you. But we met actually at the very beginning of COVID, and he is from Maine, so he has a nature loving background, which I think was so important for us. And because of it being early summer of COVID, we didn't go out to restaurants. We couldn't do anything. The only thing that we could do to go on quote unquote dates was be outside. So we went on hikes. And I had a puppy who's now our dog, and he's 4 now. And everything had to be with me and my puppy. So we would go on hikes, we would go, outdoors. And my partner, his name's Cam, he has a love for cooking like no other, which I'm so blessed to have. And for our first date, he made me homemade pizza and homemade almond milk ricotta cheese because I'm lactose intolerant. And we sat in his backyard in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and my dog made a huge mess of the yard. And it was so nice because it was so easy to connect. And I think that was just at that point where I was starting to slow down and look inward and figure out who I wanted to be. And he was so accepting of it all, like through all the things I threw at him. Hey, I want to try Reiki on you. Hey, I want you to try these herbs. Hey, I want you to do this meditation with me. I mean, now we've been living together for 2.5 years now, and he'll tell me, he's like, hey, can you put on that meditation from the other night for me to go to bed? And I'm like, yeah, let's do a meditation before bed. Or, I give him anti-anxiety tinctures all the time. And I give him tinctures that are specifically good for ADHD and focus. And, some days he'll be like, can you make me a tea blend and just surprise me with whatever I'm feeling? And I love that interaction that we have, and having a partner that's supportive of my experience and my adventure, but also someone that's along for the ride. He has a ton of his own hobbies that I obviously can benefit from, like cooking, and he's a photographer. And I think at the end of the day, for me, it was finding someone who could have different hobbies than me, but come together in the shared value. And that shared value is, having a life that's surrounded by nature. I think when we dated, we were probably 5 dates in, and I told him, hey, I just want to let you know, when my lease ends at the end of this year, I'm going to move out to Colorado. If you like me and you want to see where this is going, you can come. But if not, you should end it right here, because I'm not changing my mind.
That's amazing. And obviously he was like, okay. I mean, he had nothing else that needed his
Yeah.
attention. He could just jump and go.
Well, at that point, we were both remote because of COVID. No one was going into an office. And he was like, yeah, why not? Colorado's cool. And he's a huge snowboarder. So every weekend come wintertime, we are going at 5 a.m., driving out to the mountains.
That's awesome. And so how do you keep that spark alive, or how do you navigate when tough times come?
For me, therapy, but it's understanding what each other's triggers are and respecting that. I think a lot of people assume because you have these bad fights, or because they're triggered so many times by the same thing, that it's the relationship issue, and it's never going to work out because you have this issue that doesn't go away. But in reality, that's going to happen in every relationship, no matter who that other person is. If you have your own triggers that you're not working through, it's never going to be resolved unless you have a partner that doesn't put anything into the relationship. Then it's just one-sided. So for us, it's constantly working on ourselves separately and then coming together. We're both in therapy, and I think that that's had a huge part in our health, the health of our relationship, because we can go into an argument and look and say, okay, I hear your perspective, but I don't agree. And I can come in and say, I hear your perspective and I don't agree. So let's figure out why we don't agree, and come together and kind of come out of it with a resolution that will help us with the next argument. Because it's not an if we're going to argue, it's a when we're going to argue. And when we're going to argue, can we work together as a team rather than a who's going to win, who's going to lose situation.
That also takes a lot of, I don't know if it's courage or just the willingness to go to therapy and work on yourself and find your passions and not commingle. What's the word? Like codependency.
Codependent. Yeah.
Yeah. To be able to find yourselves and then also build that relationship together. So thank you for sharing all about that. And I want to bring it to your candles. So you make homemade candles, which I think is just incredible. I'm curious how you got into that, why candles? And then also, how do you find motivation and inspiration to create?
Yeah. I think everything started from COVID.
It was like life
I,
path different. Let's
yeah,
do this.
seriously. But I was gifted a candle making kit. My college friend group and I were still really close. I think it's been like 10 or 11 years of friendship now. And we, uh, every Christmas, we do a Secret Santa, and we decided, let's do things that are actually meaningful and not like gag gifts. So someone got me a candle making kit, and I didn't touch it until COVID happened, because again, I was like, what else am I going to do? I may as well use it. And I made the candle, and I was like, oh, this is so easy. And so I actually got some molds, and I decided to make my own, and I just kind of got more creative. I was playing with different waxes. I was playing with different essential oils and different natural dyes to try to make it smell and appeal to other people. And then when Roe v. Wade got overturned, I started to actually sell. I had a bunch of female body candles. So I sold all of them and I made them all pink and I sold all of them. And I think it was 100% of the proceeds I then donated to Planned Parenthood.
That's amazing. How cool. And what a wonderful way to dive in and be like, here's my way to give back and help bring awareness.
Yeah. And I think it came to a point where I was losing money. And so I said to folks, hey, I'm going to still make these pink candles. That will be the ones that I donate. But if I made other candles that were different shapes or different colors or different scents, like would people buy them? And all my friends were like, oh my gosh, yes. And so I made an Instagram for it and I am terrible at keeping up with it. And life happens and I actually had to stop for the summer selling the candles because they would melt while in delivery because it's been so hot out. So, it's one of those things that I want to treasure as a hobby, but I also would love to make money off of. Again, finding that right balance. But for me, it's how can I make something and then how can I make it meaningful to someone else? Like if I love it, I want to share it to other people. So I always have to start with myself. Like I have to make a candle that I think is perfect before I could sell it to someone else. Or I have to make tinctures that work for me before I can give it to a friend or before I can share it with a client.
That makes sense. Were you always that way? Like that's how you worked and what drives you and inspires you?
I think so. I think in high school, I actually used to do makeup on the side. So I would do it for sweet 16s. I actually did it for a few weddings, not for the bride, but for like bridesmaids and stuff. And I've done it for bat mitzvahs and other big events. And, everyone always asks me, how do you get into this? I'm like, well, I like to look good and I like to put on makeup. And so I just did it and I explored it for myself. And then, enough people have said, oh, I like your makeup. And I'm like, I could do it for you. So it kind of it's very natural progression for me. It's like something that I personally find creative and find value in myself. And then I can kind of share it amongst people I love. And that's like almost my love language.
Yeah. Are you naturally outgoing? Would you consider yourself an extrovert? Because I think I'm so amazed by that you're just eagerness or just it's so natural to you to, I'm going to do this and I love this and then let me share. And it seems like it's a really easy progression. Whereas if I reflect on myself, I have to work really hard to open up and share out. I'm just curious, how would you describe yourself?
I am an extreme extrovert. And I
Oh,
think that is part of that buzzing sensation in me that I need to just do something and go and be with other people, socialize. Like I find that I can have a full day of things and still feel like I could do more, which is something I've obviously been working on. But I don't know. I think it was always something that I love to do. Like even as a kid, my mom is also pretty creative. We used to paint the furniture and she used to, I have this old bookshelf from, I don't know, since I was a baby that my mom painted stories on it. It's like fairy tales all over the sides and on the top. And it's beautifully done. And I just love the way that she integrated her creativity into something that again is something that I would love because they were my favorite stories. And those were some things that I could look on and like follow the little like characters and the flowers. And I just loved the appreciation for it and the creativity of having nothing and building out something.
mhm. That's incredible. How cool. My dad used to do murals on our wall. So while we
Love
couldn't take
that.
those with, I think it's really fun to see how everyone expresses. And what is your sun sign and like your moon and rising, if you know that too? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I gotta look it up. I do know it. I actually just looked at this the other day because my friend told me to download the CoStar app.
Oh, yeah. I just got that
Yeah,
probably 2 years ago. I don't always look at it, but I think it does a really good job.
yeah. So I do know this. I'm a Sagittarius, so that's my sun, which is outgoing, adventurous. extroverted, very much everything that I embody. My rising is a Cancer, and I don't know much about Cancer. And my moon is a Gemini.
Okay. I can give you some Cancer. I'm a Cancer sun, and I really nurture and energetic and emotions, the flow. I like to hermit. So I come back to myself. My home is my space of everything, is my safe space. And I'd say it's like, it's warm, it's slow. I mean, and this is more me too, but I think it's really that family, the nurturer, the nourishment that you provide is how I would describe Cancer. But my son, I have two sons now. My first son is a Sagittarius sun. And so I don't see it yet, but I see that fire, that adventurous spirit. So how fun. And my daughter is a Gemini as well as a
Oh,
Gemini sun. So
what's your son and daughter's birthdays?
yes. So Lily, who is the Gemini, she was a June 11th. And then my son Forrest, he is December 12th. So that was fun. It was 12,
Okay.
12, and he's my little Sag baby. And my second son is a Virgo. And so he was born in September. He's almost one now. But yeah, it's so fun to see how it all plays out. It's overwhelming. I have to write it all down and remember. I at least remember their sun signs. But yeah, I'm so curious to see how they're gonna explore. But yeah, I can tell that it just is natural for you to create friendship, create relationship, socialize, be extroverted. You weave it very beautifully.
Thank you. Cam is actually or dead Gemini. He's was it June 16th.
Okay, very,
Yeah.
very close. Oh, yeah. Little Geminis. Geminis are so fascinating. You know what? It's been really interesting when I've said it. A lot of people always go, oh, weird. A lot of people look down on Geminis for whatever reason.
Yeah, because of the whole two-face visual of it, or like
Hmm.
two-sided. And to me, when I think about that in terms of Cam, I see he's an introvert through and through, but more of a, it's funny, he likes people in his home. Like he's
Mm.
an introvert, but in the way that he likes to entertain here. And so that's kind of our like meeting in the middle where like I want to entertain, I want to see people, I want to do all this. He's like, okay, why don't I cook dinner and you can set up and do the decor and we'll have a dinner party and all of our friends can come here, but I'm in my own space. I can wear what I want. I can go upstairs if I want. And so like for us, that's kind of our like happy point where we can have parties and have friends over and I can have that warm, inviting, nurturing love and like treat them and make sure that they feel good. And then he could cook for them because that's his love language. But then he doesn't have to leave his home.
That makes sense. I'd say we're very similar, my husband and I, in the sense of just, yeah, that home feeling. But we like to socialize and things, but not to that level. Also,
Yeah.
having kids, one day we will get there, but that is just our life right now. So, as you look forward, what are a few of your goals and where do you hope to be and where do you see yourself in a couple years or so?
My goals. I think I want to continue on the path I'm on right now. I feel like it's the path that I feel like I've been meant to go on and I feel like it's just started. I would love to go deeper into nature, whether it's to buy a plot of land somewhere and almost create our own homestead. That's something that we've talked about. I think that for me, it's continuing to listen to myself. I've been hearing for a very long time, you have to get out of corporate America. You have to follow this healing path. And I've heard it and pushed it aside. It's not the good time, not a good time. And there's something in me that's telling me that when I'm ready to have a child, that's going to be the time that I take that second layer of slowing down and I focus on the healing and maybe being an herbalist or making products or whatever that might look like, but having that second slowdown of my life.
That's beautiful. And yes, kids change you. They were and have been just the biggest transformative catalysts of my life. So it will definitely shift and open you to new things and definitely make you slow down. So that's beautiful. I love that. I can definitely see that for you. And as we move to some wild heart questions to close us out, how do you live wildly?
Well, like I mentioned, every day has to be a little bit of nature, but there's something that I've been doing this summer. I don't know if it's going to last through the winter, but every alpine lake I have hit, I go and I do a cold plunge. If there's no one there, I'll do it naked, but there's usually people there. So that's something for me. And most of the time, no one gets in. I have friends that I'll be like, okay, we'll just sit out here and take picture if you want. But um, it's like a reconnection and it's like a respark of what I want and how I feel, and it just it's invigorating and I love it. I did a hike last weekend by myself, like 10 miles in Rocky Mountain National Park, and I was the only one on the hike the entire time. And at the top was this beautiful lake, and you're above tree line, so it almost feels like fog is rolling in, but it's actually the clouds. And so I got stripped down and I went in completely naked and I just screamed in there and I just sat in the water and I watched this cloud come in and literally engulf me and then leave. And it was, I don't know how to describe it, but it was truly magical.
That sounds magical and amazing and inspiring. That inspires me to, I know one day I'll get back out and do those big hikes, but I'm right there with you. You got a cold plunge. If you've hiked that far and gotten to it,
Yeah.
why not let the magic soak in and enjoy it? That's beautiful. And who or what currently inspires you?
I mean, I think everything in nature inspires me constantly, but I do think that I'm very slowly reading sweet braiding sweetgrass. So I've been reading braiding sweetgrass for over a year now because it's just so beautiful yet so dense that I can only do like a chapter a week. It's a lot. I love the stories, and I think that it's something that everyone should read, whether you're a politician, a mother, a child, maybe not a child, but a teenager. It's such an eye-opening book for me because it really teaches me so much that unfortunately our system neglected to teach.
Oh my gosh, hugely. And I'm literally doing the same thing. I downloaded it right before I gave birth and then have slowly gone through. I think I'm three-fourths of the way through. But to your point, I don't want to rush it because it's so beautiful. The messages, the philosophy, the indigenous ways that you learn through this, it is mind blowing. So I will, yes, recommend it as well. I think every single person should read that, and that should be in the curriculum in education for
100%.
like middle schoolers, as young as we can get it, or some of those, the stories and the pieces that she brings forward, we definitely could use in our society.
Yeah. Just swap it out from the Odyssey. No one needs to read that.
Gosh, yeah.
It's so long, and most people just watch the movie.
Yes, I don't think I did either, truthfully. They told us to, and I was like, no, just someone tell me what happened and I'll move forward with my life. But my last question to you is, what is one thing you think could change the world? Maybe to make it a healthier, a whole, or happier place, if you could choose one thing.
One thing's tough. I actually heard Paul Stamets one time say, the world would be a lot happier if everyone took psychedelics, which I partly do agree, but I think there's a deeper message in there, which is, when you go on a spiritual trip on psilocybin, for example, you reconnect that connection from the land to who you are in ways that most people have never had that connection. And I think having that respect for the land, as you would have respect for someone else, a human being, will change our perspective on how we treat the environment and how we treat climate change and how we take care of the earth. I think it's really hard for me to watch and witness the world kind of crumble and feel hopeless because I feel like I'm doing a lot in my part, but I'm not doing enough and I'm not doing everything. And if everyone just did a little bit more, we would be in such a better place. And so, when I think about motherhood and what that would look like for me, it's teaching my children to respect the land as if it were their own mother, and to respect the weeds as if they were the most rare flower. And I think part of that is from herbalism, is understanding that weed looking plant that you see all the time has these incredible benefits to save you and to heal you. And being able to say, that's not just something that we take care of when we clean our lawn, or that's not something our dogs just use to pee on. That is true medicine, and we need to cherish that and protect it. Otherwise, we'll start depleting from our natural resources.
Mm-hmm. You said it very well. I don't think there's more than that. Truthfully, that is such a big piece. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's really beautiful and so deep. I'm like, yeah, so simple, but it's not taught. We're so far removed from that place. So if more of us can bring that forward and bring that medicine and remembrance and respect, I think is the word, just respect the land, respect the resources that we're given, so much could change. So you said it very well. And where can people find you?
So I am on Instagram, not really on anything else. My Instagram handle is K_T_gold. From there, you can find my dog's Instagram and my candle Instagram. I will be honest, I do not update my candles as much as I'd like to, but I do plan to expand that into the products that I make. So I make face bombs, and I also make different tea blends and different tinctures. So I do plan on expanding that into either an Etsy account or into a website, but just trying to slow down in life and not do too much at once.
That's okay. Thank you for sharing. I will link all of that below so you can find her and check her out. Well, thank you, Katie, so much. I very much appreciate your time. And this was such a delight. You're very deep and wisdomful. And just thank you for sharing your journey and everything you've learned thus far.
Thank you for having me, Olivia.
Thank you so much for listening to the Live Wildly podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. It goes a long way to helping gain new listeners and fills my heart to see your reviews every time it comes through. It just keeps me inspired and going on this journey. And if you'd like to learn more or follow Olivia further, you can check me out at www.olivia-ashley.com. And just there's a lot there that you can check out, and you can learn more about the podcast episodes. You can also follow along on Instagram at Wildly Olivia or at Live Wildly Podcast. So thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate all of you listeners, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks again.